And welcome to another episode of Lifting Your Spirits. This time I have the amazing Jonny Tiernan from Northern Ireland. He is the creator of LOLA Magazine, a huge deal in Berlin. He's also an awesome DJ. We talk about loads of stuff. How he started in the media of print in the first place, how he won the lottery and became a DJ, and about all the famous people that he's had in the magazine and how starstruck he's been, or lack of. I'm glad you're here. I'm making my Pina Colada. You're welcome to make it along with me. Check out all the links in your peripherals, and you know the story. Check it out. Buy me a coffee if you like, or not. Just enjoy this one. We go on for a while because he's a great storyteller. So sit back, get your cook on, make a soup, or just drive into the distance and enjoy the show. Another episode of Lifting Your Spirits, where I show you how to make a cocktail, and then I take that cocktail to my friend who's waiting in the West Wings, and we're going to just talk about life, man. And you're all invited, and it's always a great time. You know that. That's why you're here. Today, I'm going to make you a Pina Colada. They're like, they're that all-inclusive hotel when you're 19 years old with you and all your pals, and you just get absolutely shit-faced and you regret it for the rest of your life. So the first thing that we need is our rum. Now, we usually go white rum because aged rum, dark rum, it'll affect the colour too much. 60 mils. The next thing that we want is our lime juice, 30 mils. Nice and citrus. It's a beach drink after all. It has to be. Then we're going to go in with some pineapple juice, and we go in 40 mils. Then we're going to go in with a little bit of sugar syrup because we're going to use some coconut milk, and when you put the coconut milk in, it can make it a little bitter. So we need to bring that bitterness down, and we go in with just 20 mils. So now we're going in with our coconut milk. Do equal measures of the pineapple and coconut, so 40 mils. So what we need to do is just give it a little taste first. That's the measurements you need for this drink, man. That is the measurements that you need. But what we need very importantly is good, fresh, crushed ice. Tiki cocktails, always crushed. So, big old bag of crushed ice. Nice, fluffy, crushed ice. Right, glass straw, a little bit of decoration. I mean, it's got to be a bit of pineapple. And that is now when we go in and we shake everything up. Okay, so then we go in. Look at that colour. You just always want to top up. And to finish it off, you need to have just some nice leaves off the pineapple. Oh my God, my guest is going to love this. So, let's go. So, let's take this to my guest who's waiting in the West Wings. Oh yeah, look at this. All right, okay. My guest today is all the way from Belfast. He's an absolutely amazing DJ, and he is the creator of the LOLA Magazine. It's only Jonny Tiernan, everyone. Look at this.
Where can I get myself a drink?
How you doing, man?
I am good.
How's your I like Pina Colada?
I'm just gonna get stuck into it now.
Mate, absolutely, man, absolutely. It's, I'm not gonna lie.
That's amazing.
Mate, I'm quite impressed with it. I won't lie, I don't usually toot my own horn when it comes to cocktails, but
Fact,
tell me.
this is the first alcoholic cocktail I've drank in 3 years.
That is nuts.
Fact.
That is nuts, man, because I wasn't sure. I know you're not the biggest drinker, and I was like, sometimes when you invite people onto the podcast, they're like, fuck, am I going to have to sit and drink like 3 cocktails and stuff, and it's not usually the case. I've even done non-alcoholic cocktails for some guests.
Yeah, I mean, I could have went for that, but to be honest with you, I'm more than pleased with this wonderful creation.
I mean, it's all right. I'm glad I went for the wine glass. Mm-hmm. I was going to try and
classy. I think that's what you would say about this drink. First off, you're like, class.
And I've no idea, Johnny. I've no idea why I thought of today when I was trying to think of like what cocktail that I would do for you. I don't know why Pina Colada sprung to mind.
It really fits. I mean,
does it? Is the Pina Colada part? Would you say it characterises you well?
I'm fairly flamboyant and fairly camp in a lot of ways, and I say this kind of like really ticks those boxes, right? You know what I mean? Doesn't it?
I'm
very comfortable with myself.
I love it. I like to think I'm a reader of characteristics, man.
Beautiful, love it.
Well, so listen, man. Just for everyone who doesn't know, you are the creator of LOLA, and. What a magazine, man. What a kind of cultural, just media outlet. How did you manage to come up with Lola? And is it just in Berlin that you come up with this?
Yeah. So this...
Because you're from Belfast.
I'm from Belfast, but I published a magazine in Belfast. It actually went across the UK and Ireland as well.
What was it called?
It was called Alternative Ulster, or AU.
Right.
So I launched that in 2003 and published that for 9 years.
What's your role in it when you say you published it?
Like I created it.
I wrote for the print designs, went to the printing shop and all that.
I mean, it's kind of an insane story. It was sort of by accident rather than by design.
Right.
So I was studying psychology, and in my final year at uni, I had this idea for a pirate radio show. Like, I'd been DJing for years at this point, and, I just was like, didn't think there was anything good in the radio, so I was like, it'd be really cool, like a pirate radio station would be awesome, wouldn't it? I can, play whatever music I want. And then I was thinking about what the first song I would play on the station would be, right?
Don't say Pina Colada.
No, that would be it. No, the first song I thought I'd play is Alternative Ulster, which is a punk song by the Stiff Little Fingers, which was released in the late 70s.
What song by the Stiff Little Fingers?
Alternative Ulster.
Okay, right. So this is the one I know is...
Suspect Device.
That's the one, man. Yeah.
So, an Alternative Ulster, it's basically a song about making a change. The lyrics are like, grab it, change it, it's yours. Like doing something different, kicking against the pricks. It's a really inspirational song. It's pretty much an anthem for Northern Ireland, let's say.
Right.
Anyway, so I was like, I'd play as my first song. I was like, well, I'd just call the whole station Alternative Ulster. Like, why? That's what I'd do, It's just the idea. Just call the whole station Alternative Ulster. But I was still at uni studying psychology. I don't have the wherewithal or like resources to set up a pirate radio station. So one night when I couldn't sleep, I wrote it all down in the back of like a file block. I didn't have any paper left, and I wrote all the names down, wrote all the DJs I knew and the people I knew, and I set it down, right? Then I was in town with my dad one day, having lunch with him, and he was taking the piss clean out of me. He was all like, DJ Johnny the DJ, like, who do you think you are? And I was like, give me a break, Dad. So then I left him after lunch. I'm walking up the street past the Botanic train station in Belfast, and this girl stopped me and said, hey, are you Johnny the DJ? And I was like, where's my dad? Where's my dad? It's like, is he putting you up to this? So I was like, you're having me on here? And she says, here. She's like, no, would you write an article for me about the club nights you're running for this new website I'm going to launch? Nice. It's going to be called Alternative Ulster. And I was like, no way. I was like, that's insane. I had the same idea but for a radio station. So we swapped email addresses, kept in touch, right? Then a friend of mine told me to look at this website in Northern Ireland called Fast Food, right? FUDE. Now this was back in the day when everybody was on forums, pre-social media, And it was a forum for Northern Irish music, right? where people went on and talked about, promoted, etc. So I clicked on it. The first day I ever looked at it after people being like, look at this, look at this. The first day, the first link I seen was this link saying, do you want your stuff played on the radio? And I was like, huh, yeah, I was kind of producing music. I clicked it and it took me to this website for a thing called Northern Visions, which was a media company in Northern Ireland that was starting a radio show, a radio station, sorry. And it said, do you have an interest in programming, engineering, presenting? If so, get in touch. And I was like, I have an idea. Why don't I take that idea for a radio station, right? And condense it into a radio show. And do a radio show called Alternative Ulster.
Okay.
So then I said to Kathy, the girl doing the website, I'm like, look, you're doing the same thing with the website. I want to do this with a radio show. Why don't we team up together and do it together, right? This was the idea. So I typed up this proposal, took it into Northern Visions, the place, and I was like, look, I've got this idea for the show. This is who'll be involved. This is what we do. And they're like, yeah, sounds good. Bring some music in. Come on in. Have a chat about it. So me and Kathy went to the station, went in, and they're like, okay, go in and record the show. We're like, what? And they're like, yeah, go in and record the show. There's one free time slot left on a Sunday. You can have it. It's yours now. And we went in and we just recorded the show. And by a pure fluke, so we had conceived of these ideas independently with the same name, promote Northern Irish music on the web. The idea for the radio, by a pure fluke, she launched her website on the exact same day that we recorded the first radio show, which was the 14th of March. So conceived independently, and then they just happened at exactly the same time.
Very interesting.
And then went from this radio show, we did this radio show for a year, it became like this cult hit. And yeah, we just played Northern Irish music, we got people on for acoustic sessions.
Am I going to look like a tit not knowing what this is like? To
No. This was like,
if this going out to Anne, this guy's going, who's this guy? Fucking Jonny Tiernan sitting here, and fucking this guy doesn't know what the hell the cult hit.
No, you wouldn't like. Yeah, if you're in Northern Ireland, you might have known about it at the time, but it was a wee small local thing. And then after the first year, we were talking about relaunching. Basically, whenever I finished uni, instead of getting a regular job, I wanted to get a job in the media. That was what I wanted to do. Of course, there are no jobs in the media. So then after 6 months of being on the dole, they're like, okay, you can either do this New Deal for Musicians program, like you can, do you know what I don't know if you know, it's basically like you go on a training course to become a musician. Right, okay. Or you can do a start your own business program. So my idea was like, well, I could start a record label called Alternative Ulster.
Right, I love
this was my idea,
yeah,
right?
I love that.
And then instead of doing that, we were relaunching the website as an online magazine. And the idea was that the front page of the website would have a load of headlines and you would click them and they would take you to those pages. Yeah. And then we were doing that, and then we were doing a launch party for it. And someone said, well, like, why don't we do a print version of the website for the launch party? And I was like, well, if we're going to do a print version for the launch party and it's a print version of a website, that's a magazine. I'm like, why don't I just do a magazine? Instead of doing a record label, why don't I do a magazine? I'll do a magazine. Brilliant. So then I this is how insane it was when it started. What I did was I was putting it all together in Photoshop, right? To give these files to a designer so that they could design the magazine for me. This was the plan. I'm going to do these rough layouts in Photoshop, give it to professionals to do it, and then...
Sure.
So I'm laying this out. I'm contacting photographers, getting writers, putting ideas together, getting all this content together. No idea what I'm doing. Like, I'm just doing it because I think it's a good idea.
But man, this is how it all starts.
Right.
With every fucking off-the-wall, batshit crazy idea.
So then the designer eventually was like, I can't finish this, I can't do it. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll do it myself. So I went round to the local print shop and said, look at these files I've designed. Can you print from that? And they were like, yeah, we can. So I was like, okay, I'll just do it myself. So then in Photoshop, I designed this magazine, got all the content together. Yeah, basically didn't know what I was doing at the time. If you look at my credit on that first magazine, it says design and layout. I didn't know what an editor was or a publisher was or any of these things. And like I printed 200 copies by hand. Also didn't realize that you have to align the pages in a certain way to get them to fold. So I had to fold all the pages in a certain way and then cut the edge off 200 times and staple. And then I stuck badges at the front. It was a totally mental, totally insane.
Right.
But so I did this, and inside the first 2 weeks sold like almost all 200 copies from my hand. And I was like, okay, this seems like it's gonna work. Why don't we do a full-blown magazine? And then I was walking out of this business start course that I was on, right? So and I bumped into this friend of mine, Neil Beattie, who's a designer, and he was like, "Oh, what are you doing, John?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just this business start course, gonna start this magazine." And he's like, "Cool. I'm a designer, I'm creative director of a company here. If you want, I'll do some spreads for you for free. And I was like, great, please. I don't know what a spread was. I'm like, what's a spread? But I learned, like, if someone's going to offer to do something, you're like, yeah, please.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah. So anyway, then we did this first issue. I went around with some pictures and text to get him to do some spreads. Turns out a spread is a double-page spread in a magazine. Didn't know this. And then watched him work, and I had never seen anybody do such amazing creative work in front of my eyes in my whole life. And I was like, this is insane. Would you please design this whole magazine? And he said, I was hoping you were going to ask. I'll do the first 3 issues for free. And he basically designed this magazine cover to cover.
That's
and anyway,
brilliant.
and it basically all exploded from there.
It's
a really long story, wasn't
No,
it?
I love it. I absolutely love it, man. It's absolutely perfect.
That's right.
It's podcast gold.
Yeah.
Podcast gold. It's brilliant. It's interviewing gold when you just go like that. So how did it all start? And then that's what everyone wants to hear, man. That's what everyone wants to hear.
Yeah. I mean, you need to rub me because there's an insane climax to that part of the story as well.
Let's go for it.
Well, so
I want climax the shit out of me, Johnny.
So the whole idea behind Alternative Ulster was to promote Northern Irish music and culture. Okay.
Sure.
And it was the first kind of generation of people that had stuck around post peace agreement in Northern Ireland in '98. So
yeah,
there's like a real groundswell of musicians and artists and creative people coming through, and we just happened to be there at that time to provide a platform for these people.
Okay, cool.
And this was the goal. And for the first issue, I was like, there's a Northern Irish band called Therapy. They became pretty famous.
Therapy are great.
Right.
Question mark.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're the very same.
Uh-huh.
Good story about that question mark.
Uh-huh.
So I was like, well, these would make a great cover star, right? For the first
huge,
issue.
that band. Yeah.
So it turns out like a friend of mine, a guy I knew the bass player. Mm-hmm. Right? So I'm in the bar one night DJing and I know he's there, so I played one of their songs and he came up and he's like, I played Accelerate. He's like, are you taking the piss out of me? I was like, no, I'm a massive fan.
That, man.
And he's like, thanks. He's like, I haven't heard this song in years. So then I was like, when it came to it, I was like, I'd love to, to put them on the cover of the magazine. Then it turned out they were putting a new record out. I noticed on their website that the best music journalist from Northern Ireland, used to be the assistant editor of the NME, a guy called Stuart Bailey. He'd wrote the bio for the band on their website. So I was like, wow, if we interviewed them about the new album, I wonder if Stuart would do the interview. Mm-hmm. So I asked him and he said yes. So all of a sudden we've got like the best journalist in Northern Ireland, music journalist, writing the cover story. They've agreed to do the cover story. Then I was
one
like,
of the biggest bands in Ireland.
Right. And I was like, what about we do a launch party and if they play the launch party? So then like,
I love that, man.
right. So then I got in touch with my mate. I was like, could you put me in touch with the bass player from Therapy? I want to see about doing a gig and this is what it's for, and told him the spiel, And he's like, yeah, well. And then one day I gave him a number. I'm like leaving my house on my bike, in Belfast, cycling, the phone rings, and I answer the phone. It's Mike McKeegan from Therapy on the phone. Being like, what's this about this show you want us to do? And I was like, oh my God. Like, I went to see Therapy in 1992. Whenever I was 13 years old. Like, that's what I used to, they were my heroes,
Right, interesting.
And I was like, yeah, they're like, yeah, we'll do the show. We're up for it. So next thing, there's this magazine that's going to be coming out. It's got them on the cover. They're doing the launch party. And then they're like, we'd like to film the launch party for our first ever live DVD. They've never done a live DVD before. Mm-hmm. And they're like, we want to film this. So then they had like a 10-strong camera crew coming in with the BBC to film this for their first ever live gig. So then the word gets out. So then like, we only had like 3.5 weeks to promote the show, right? So like, well, how are we going to promote the show? We didn't have any posters made yet. We're waiting for the posters. So it's like, why don't we paste up question marks around the city? Perfect. So we made a stencil of a question mark, sprays these stencils around the city, so then everybody starts chatting on the forums. What are these question marks? Are Therapy playing? Are Therapy playing? Are Therapy playing? And it flew off, like rocketed. Crazy thing is, whenever I was 13 years old, the only time I've ever spray painted graffiti, I was spray painting Therapy on a wall. And I spray painted Therapy, and before I could draw the question mark, a woman grabbed me and pinned me to the wall by the throat and said, drop the can. Aye. And my mates just basically ran off, and I was left standing there, and she says, will you do this again? And I was like, no, I'll never do it again. Just like, right. So then she let me go, and then as I'm pasting up these question marks around Belfast, I'm like, aye. Look at me now. Yeah, look at me now. So anyway, and then the gig, it ended up sounding like people came from all over Europe, because they knew it was going to be their first ever live DVD. They came from all over 1,000. It sold 1,000 tickets.
Cool.
And that was the launch party. So the first issue was 1,000 people in the Mandela Hall in Belfast. You can actually buy the DVD now. It's called Scopophobia, and you can see the launch party for this magazine. And that's how I started publishing magazines.
Mate, I love that. Dude, like, that was I really miss those days, I'm going to sound like a couple of old farts on this right now, but I really miss those times that a launch party or getting something off the ground was literally 1,000 heads at a place enjoying the thing that you were trying to create, instead of like, I've launched it on Instagram and it's got 1,000 likes, or it's got this and this and that, you know?
Yeah.
So I kind of changed days, man.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah, I mean, I really missed that. So this last issue of Lola we did, there was no party for it, and that's something that we've done for every issue so far, and that's a really big part of what we do, and what I love about it is having these parties. It's also a way for people to meet each other, to the people the contributors to be there and to to show off their work, and to just to get that feedback and that feeling and that sense of celebration.
It is really, really important, man. It's really important to do stuff like that, I think.
Yeah.
It's for like magazine releases and just launches in general, you know.
Yeah. So I just realized as well, I just spent like 15 minutes talking about how I started publishing without saying about how Lola happened. That's how Northern Irish and long-winded my stories are. Like,
it's totally fine. So I'm assuming you used those skills that you used on that project and brought it.
Yeah,
when you landed in Berlin, you were like, let's do something.
Oh Lord, no! I mean, whenever I finished the last magazine, I published it for 10 years every month. Did 81 issues, and after the end
every month, that's heavy.
Yeah, and at the end of it, I was like, it was the best experience of my life. Learned so much, and at the end, I was like, I'm not doing that again. That is intense.
Right. Okay.
Right, and magazines they're intense things to do.
I've dabbled as well. I tried to start my own magazine here in Berlin. I think like a lot of people fell flat in its ass before it even kind of got launched and stuff. But just because I was fucking it was just a random idea. And then I worked for a bunch of literary magazines as well as a prose editor. So yeah, I understand the work that goes into it, man.
Yeah. So and I said I wouldn't do it. Like I did the last one, I said I wouldn't do it again. And then when I moved to Berlin, so I finished the last magazine in 12. Yeah. 2012. It finished then.
Right.
And I started working for another place, a place called the OES Centre, an amazing music centre in Belfast. And I worked there as a general manager. And I moved to Berlin in 2014. And I didn't intend on starting a magazine when I moved here. And what actually happened was, I moved to Berlin because I love the culture here. I love the culture of Berlin. Mm-hmm. I love music. I love art. I love film. I love the fact that outside of pandemic times, there's something amazing happening everywhere. Every night, the time. Like, and it's awesome. It's just awesome.
It's genuinely a proper city that just does not sleep.
Right.
It's the one thing that I've missed most in the pandemic is actually sitting there at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, not being able to sleep, going, what can I do? I'll go out to a bar. I'll go out to a pub. There's a gallery open at this time. I've got some pals out there. There's the clubs open. I'll go up. I've got some pals having a dance. I'll go up there. I used to love that, man.
Yeah.
Whereas like sometimes now you're like, oh, fuck's sake, 10 o'clock at night. What am I supposed to do? Sleep? What is this?
Yeah.
You
are meant to sleep at
not at 10 o'clock at night in Berlin. 10:30. It's supposed to be 10 o'clock in the morning. You're supposed to be falling in the door with God knows what.
So then I'm really passionate about promoting culture. It's sort of in my nature. I love to shout, obviously, being Northern Irish, and like to publicise and to promote things.
Sure.
So my initial idea was I didn't want to start a magazine, but I really had this idea. I wanted to I was like, maybe I should start a blog. I need an outlet to try and find a way to promote the culture and to share the joy. I know that sounds really wanky.
That's my buzzer.
It doesn't work.
That apparently doesn't work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And that's someone downstairs who's pressing all the buzzers trying to get in. But then when you come round, it doesn't work. What the fuck? What the fuck? Anyway.
So my initial idea was I wanted to start a blog, and I had this idea. I took a phrase from he was a journalist for the New York Times. And David Carr, I think his name is. And he came to journalism late in his career in the New York Times, and he'd like a pretty crazy troubled past. Like he was a single father, and there was a lot of drug problems, but he came out the other side of all of this, and ended up working at the New York Times. And he said he wasn't really from the same background as the other people who were there. Maybe they go to good schools. It's like, where you end up. But he was an incredible journalist. And he said that he had an immigrant's love of the New York Times. That's what he felt. He's an immigrant's love of the place.
Right, okay.
Where because he wasn't from there, that same background, it gave him this love. So I really thought this phrase, an immigrant's love, was awesome. So my initial idea was I wanted to create a blog called An Immigrant's Love of Berlin.
Right.
So this was my first idea. And I was like, I'm going to do this blog. I was talking to my friend from Belfast. He started out as a designer for Alternative Ulster in Belfast. One of my best friends, Stuart. And we were talking about there being no good free magazine in Berlin, like no English language magazine that didn't exist.
Yeah, basically.
And Stuart's like, you should start one then. And it's the whole idea is like, if something doesn't exist, you should go out and create it yourself. If a role doesn't exist, if something isn't there, you got to go out and make it happen.
For sure.
And he's like, you should start a magazine. And I was like, that's a crazy idea, you know? And then I was like, but I'd already sketched out this An Immigrant's Love of Berlin blog plan. I'd already put down the content that I'd be doing. You know, I already had the idea. So I was like, well, maybe it's not that crazy. Like maybe I could start a magazine.
Okay.
And once I started thinking about it, like once I started processing the idea, then and I'm the kind of person that whenever I think an idea is good, I have a really hard time not doing it. So like once I
What do you mean if you think...
Like if I think, oh, I can see how this works, I can see how this works out, I have a really hard time being like, I can see how it works, but I'm not going to do it. I'm like, I'm going to do that.
Right.
Like I think I know how it's going to work. Yeah, I'm going to do that.
Absolutely.
So once it was in my head and like I understood how to do it because I had the experience of Alternative Ulster, I was like, I'm going to do this. Yeah, so then I was working for another company for a while, and when I parted ways with them, then I was like, I'm going to start my own magazine. I'm going to start a magazine again. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then like I was having lunch with my friend Aisha, who was in my German class. When I first moved here, I just did German for 8 months. Mm-hmm. So we were having lunch one day, and I was like telling her about the magazine, and she's like, oh, what's it going to be called? And I was like, well, I don't know, because, you know, I wanted to have a title that didn't have Berlin in the title. I didn't want to have like a specific reference to Berlin.
Yeah.
Do you know why it's called?
Okay, so I think I know.
Yeah. Well, it's because like it's the name that's got a really strong connection to Berlin. The film Der Blaue Engel, that's based on the book. The lead character in that was played by Marlene Dietrich. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and her character was called Lola Lola. And the professor in the movie/book falls in love with Lola, leaves his life to be with Lola, like gives up everything to be with Lola. It's a tragic end to that story, but I kind of felt that's what Berlin is. Lola. It represents that thing that people leave their lives for, they fall in love with. Mm-hmm. Also, there's the film Run Lola Run, so you had all these connections.
I was going with the Run Lola, Run Lola,
but actually
reference.
Yeah. So that's like, so I always tell people, you know, that's where the origins come from. But the truth is that I was having lunch with Aisha, and she's like, "What's your dog called?" Yeah. And I was like, "It's called Lola." And she's like, why do you call it Lola? Yeah, and I was like, that's a stupid idea. I can't do that.
That's good though.
And then I was like,
was your dog just called Lola before you came to Berlin?
Yeah, I didn't even give her that name. I adopted her when she was 8 months, and she was already called Lola.
Wow. There's a lot of kind of fate shit going on in your life, Johnny. Loads of it, man. Loads of it. So then, fair enough, man. So you decided to do like a first issue from the experience that you had with the Tin of Ulster. How did that go, man? Who was in the first issue?
Mark Reeder was the cover star. I mean, so I just also have to point out that like the contributors to Lola are amazing, and I'm so lucky to have met these people or know people that are so talented,
cool,
and so willing to like work with Lola to produce their work. It's insane.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
I mean, Robert Rieger, the photographer that did the cover shoot, he does most of our cover shoots, and the one he did with Mark Reeder, it's just amazing. And even like having Mark do the covers for the first issue. So we did. I've
got a fucking vinyl of Mark Reeder in there. Yeah.
So actually, it was like my best friend Alan. He lives in Bristol, but we were back home at Christmas in 2015. And my dad had given, I told my dad I love this film B-Movie and I wanted the soundtrack. So what does my dad do? He buys me the soundtrack, the DVD, and the book. So I had them all. And I was like, good man, right? Okay. So then I was watching, I'd been thinking about this magazine, and I was watching this DVD of B-Movie again with my friend Alan, showing him it. And we're watching it. And then my brain just went, Mark, like he moved here in the late 70s. And, you know, he's from Manchester. So he's the quintessential, like, person.
Yeah.
You know, the immigrant, he represents this immigrant's love of Berlin, someone that came here,
you
know, on a career break, and then he, you know, loved it, fell in love, and made a life here, and like has done amazing things.
Yeah, so I was like, up there with Brian Eno, Bowie, Iggy, definitely, man.
Yeah, and so I was like, wow, that'd be amazing to have Mark. He just is the ideal first cover star, and I reached out and he said yes, and I was like, holy shit.
Dude, I love that.
So then, and then Robert, I'd met working in another place I was at, and he was up for doing the photo shoot. Yeah, and then we my friend Katja, God bless her, took us in the car. We did a photo shoot. We did it over Rambrücke, and then we did a Frankfurter tour. Then we went out to another place with a tank, and then amazingly, it was May the 1st, and we went and did a photo shoot with Mark Reeder at Coddy at May the 1st. So like Mark's wearing his like this amazing military regalia, you know? And he described himself like he felt like a drop of oil in water because all the crowds were just like moving, and there were so many people. There was just like they were just moving around him, and we got this amazing shoot for that. Yeah, and then so he was the first cover star, and then the other in that first issue, the other like really famous story we did an interview with Frisbee Jesus, a guy Herbert Schmidt. He's the Frisbee Jesus of Gurlitzer Park.
That's right. For me, he's the Jim Morrison. You're kind of the Frisbee Jim Morrison.
Yeah,
you know?
Like if you ever go to Gurley, as long as it's not raining. Like any time of the year, Herbert's there.
Gurlitzer Park for the people back home is like a big old park in the middle of Berlin. Basically, there's many parks in Berlin, but Gurlitzer is the kind of it's the rough and ready one. It's so culturally significant to the kind of Kreuzberg kind of they're right in the middle, man. There's this huge bowl in the middle that everyone just sits there in the summer and just gets fucking mad with it. And there's always this one, and how like the distance that he frisbees is like fucking the size of like a football pitch or some shit, man. And he's just like with the one finger, just kind of like
behind the head
and all that, and he just goes, you know. And I think it's like it's a little bit of a big deal if you get to play with him or something like that. Yeah. But he's always got his crew.
It was crazy just because I live on the street in front of the park, and I just seen him there every day. You know, in 2014, I'd be like, what is this guy doing here every single day? And I was like, I mean, is it meditation to him? What is it that drives him to go out there all the time? And I really wanted to know. So I just walked up to him one day and I was like, could we interview you and do photos for this magazine that I want to do? And he was like, yeah, cool, we'll do it. And and it's funny, like when we were talking to him, he did say in the interview, it's like a kind of meditation to me. And I was like, so I think that's his.
That's cool.
That's his meditation. He goes out there with the headphones, listens to different music.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a really interesting guy. Yeah.
I know you've had like a lot of you've had like some big characters. Is there any that's kind of because you've had like Peaches?
Yeah.
I know that the last time that I wanted to come see you DJ, I was supposed to come, and Mullen Nilsson was also going to play or DJ at the event. I love Molly Nelson, man. I absolutely adore her music. You know, like Fran Healy from Travis, apparently he lives in Berlin. Michael Stipe from R.E.M., he lives in Berlin, or at least used to.
He did, yeah. Michael Stipe is like the story about Michael Stipe.
Tell me, because I've got a story about it.
I want to hear your story. So it was, I originally came here for a 2-month career break. I wasn't meant to stay in Berlin. I came here in a career break for my last job. And I came here for 2 months.
Okay.
And after my first month, I luckily got my own apartment by a total fluke. Mm-hmm. And it's where I still am now. Anyway, the day I phoned up my work and was like, I've got my own apartment, career break, it's kind of career broken. Mm-hmm. I'm not coming back.
Right.
Sorry. And my mate Oshin was visiting me from Belfast, and we went to Das Gift together. And we were in Das Gift in the front part of the bar, and there were 3 people at the other table sitting drinking, and I was sitting with Oshin, and this song came on, like This Is the Day, which is one of my favorite songs of all time. This is the day your life will surely change. This is the day when things fall into place. And I'm listening to this, and I turn around, and I'm like, that guy there looks a lot like Michael Stipe, but there's no way that's Michael Stipe. And I'm like, but that looks like Michael Stipe. So then I got out my phone and Googled, and like, that is Michael Stipe.
Right.
And then I was like, well, if Berlin's good enough for Michael Stipe, it's good enough for me. Good choice. I'll stay. Right. And then
he used to come into the restaurant I used to work in called Nansen, and it was so. What I kind of wanted to say is one of the things that I love about Berlin is just a sea of people. You can get lost so easily in this city. You can go out at one shop, walk 10 feet, and you are among a whole other different fucking amount of people and stuff. You can really get lost, and I really love that. I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of like famous people will come down here. For example, Honey Dijon just like walks around on Cullen, and she's she's huge. She just can walk from one street to the next, and I'm sure that no one even knows who she is and recognizes her. And there's probably a couple of people up in a set of ladders going, "Oh shit, Honey Dijon," you know. And I think that's why a lot of people maybe come to Berlin and love these bigger cities to get completely lost in. And Michael Stipe would, I said, I assumed just come to this restaurant today. That was the thing. And it was great. I was freaking out when I saw him because I love R.E.M. I grew up with R.E.M. I fucking think they're great. And no one of my workers knew who he was. And I'm sitting there behind the bar. And I think I get quite easily starstruck, if I'm honest. And I was just like, shit. And I was talking away to him about wine because I was working behind the bar. But whenever they were taking the food, I was like, hey, to the waiter or the waitress. I was like, I'll be taking the food to the table, and it was just great. Just watched them there, just hanging out doing the thing. But I had to bite my tongue, man, because I went down there with like 4 desserts, and in that kind of nervousness, all the desserts were exactly the same, right? There's 4 people, 4 desserts. I'm going to the table and I say, who's got the fucking chocolate truffles or whatever it was, And Michael's type just turns and goes, everybody. And I had to bite my tongue. I was like, I just wanted to be like, I was ready to do it, I was just ready to belt out everybody hurts. Sometimes. But I couldn't do it. And I'm so glad I never. I think, in those kind of situations that he might have just been like, okay, very good. That was good, But is there anyone that's taken you by surprise and all that you've ever been a bit like, oh man, I just love your work so much. I'm so glad to have you here, or you've been kind of been blown away by anyone that you've had on NOLA, or even not, just like kind of walking about Berlin?
No, I tell you, he's like a Boys Noise. We had Boys Noise in the cover of issue 3. I've been a huge fan of his. I've DJed his records for years. I saw him in Texas at South by Southwest once, and it was just mind blowing. And I've just been like a really long term fan of his label and his work.
Okay.
So and he just turns out he's a really down to earth, dead on, super nice guy.
Most people are, man, when it really, you know what I mean.
Yeah. But he was a really good sport. We did a really great photo shoot with him at. It's in, do you know where Kindle Brauerei is? So there's a building beside there. Anyway, in Neukölln.
Yeah.
So we did a really great photo shoot with him there, and he was just really up for it. It was cool. Also, like, we did the last cover star, Juliana Huxtable. We did an awesome photo shoot with her in a lake up by Kaulsdorf, Habermannsee. And it was like the last sunny day of the year, and it was still pretty cold, and she was a super sport. And like, actually, we had Robert, the photographer, had this idea of getting her like, into the lake. Yeah, so that's what we ended up doing for the cover. But like, what you can't see right here is it was cold in there.
Oh yeah.
And she was fully up for it. And we
Poor her.
But yeah.
Poor her.
Yeah, and she was a really good sport for it. So, but I mean, I also like, I just love people who are doing things creatively and like actually putting themselves out there. And
absolutely,
I'm always thrilled to meet people.
Yeah, no, it's one thing that you touched upon. You touched on earlier on where you were kind of in the midst of, you were on the dole and someone saying, hey, do you want to go do this? What do you call it? Ausbildung? This kind of
New Deal for musicians.
Yeah, New Deal for musicians, and you're like that. No, I want to fucking create something, man. And you see a gap somewhere, you see a niche. And then you just go for it, man. I really respect anyone that starts something from nothing. I will always respect anyone that has the audacity to do it, because it's a big job, man. It's a huge endeavour.
Yeah.
To get whatever is going on in here into a kind of tangible, palpable, touchable thing. Yeah. Very difficult to do.
Like, on a tangent, I think that's also why things like universal basic income should be quite important, because if it wasn't for having the ability, if it wasn't for having the dole, like having the unemployment benefit and having that in Belfast, like I would never have had the life I had.
Yeah.
After that, it just wouldn't have existed. Yeah. If I'd have been forced at that point in time, like go and get a job in a factory or go and get any kind of job, then I would never have had that opportunity to do that thing.
I've been thinking a lot about universal income lately, but I don't want to interrupt.
No, because actually, do you know, like the Gallagher brothers said the same thing. Like they started Oasis on the dole.
Really?
And they were like, yeah, I mean, for them, if it hadn't have been for the dole and having that support network, then they could never have started that band, which now is like,
Totally.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I think that there's an underappreciation for what having that universal basic level can allow people to do.
It's slightly problematic, and from the offset, I'm all for giving a bunch of people some like enough money to get by, so they can do other things. I think there might be I think it would have to be capped at some point. Because the thing is, man, not everyone is creative, and a lot of people can slip into lazy bastardism, which can also within itself create loads of like mental health problems. And the only reason I'm kind of saying that is because I am so fortunate through this pandemic in the past, well, let's call it fucking what it is, man, almost a year and a half now, you know, of like hustling and trying to do stuff. The German government have sorted me out in a huge way, right? I've been here long enough, paid long enough into the system that I'm eligible to get what's called Hartz-IV. For anyone back home, it's just the dole. But the way that they work it is they kind of calculate it from whatever you've paid into the system, over how many years they will they'll sort you out. You might have to pay some of it back, but that's totally fine because by the time you're paying some of it back, you're going to be working anyway, so it's not going to be too much of a big deal. But they have released and relieved such a financial pressure off me over the past year that I was able to hustle and grind, like sit down and just learn stuff. So it's, you know, going a little tangent if you don't mind, just like over the past year, I must have written about 2 hours of brand new stand-up material, right? And it's not even tried and tested on a fucking stage yet, right? It's just written, ready to go. And for like anyone out there that like comedians and stuff, they'll tell you it takes about a year to write an hour, you know? So within a year I've learned like Premiere, Adobe Premiere with like editing skills. I've started 2 podcasts. I've been doing like cocktail recipes, blah, 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 right? But that's because within my nature, I'm not someone who can just sit down and just watch life pass me by, especially in this age of kind of social media where it can kind of mess with your head, where you just like, you're constantly seeing people do things. But I know that everyone's not like that. And I'll tell you something, man, I was hustling so much that I even done like a medical trial for a couple of months. Whether that was in the just at the end of December and stuff, so I couldn't. I was kept so busy right up until the beginning of March 2021, and I have to admit, because I've got this financial relief, I've become very lazy over the past month, very lazy, and it's partly to do with the fact that I stopped doing this medical trial, so it meant I could start drinking again, because I didn't drink for like 3 months because we were doing blood tests and shit. So basically I've just thrown all caution to the wind, using the card. I've not bought anything extravagant, by the way. I've not been out spending money on CDs and fucking music and clothes and all that kind of stuff. I haven't done that for God knows how many years. But I haven't had that get up and go attitude.
So I can tell you said CDs because who buys CDs, mate? Like,
I've been downloading.
You're kind of weaker there, like that's.
haven't bought my own cassettes.
Out there buying CDs, like Jesus.
At HMV.
Sorry,
but it made me think. Long story short, it made me think that this past 4, 5, 6 weeks, I really haven't done anything because I know that there's an amount of money, a substantial amount of money that is not going to see me struggling anyway. The rent's paid for, the health insurance is paid for. I can feed myself at the supermarket quite happily for the next month on this stuff. So I'm wondering how many people would get so comfortable in that situation and just not do anything. How much would they not contribute to themselves, to the people around them, but also to the economy that they're involved in? You know, I think if you can cap it and just give people an extra couple of €100, if you were to give everyone €1,500 a month, and be like, hey, there you go, there's your basic income. Would it go back into the machine? Would it go back into the system? Would they go out and spend the money? And what would the contribution be? I think this is where it becomes slightly problematic. If you give someone £500 a month, hey, there's an extra £500. Go spend it on something nice, but you're still going to have to keep your full-time job. I think a lot of people will be happy to give up the full-time job and keep £1,500 a month if they'll get it for free.
Right.
That's where income universal income can become ever so
Well,
slightly problematic.
you could read more about it in this magazine.
Yeah? Which one's that?
There's this magazine called LOLA. They just
Is
did a
it?
feature on the universal basic income trial that's happening. Oh, this one?
This one?
Oh, yeah. I think this is the exact thing. Yeah, that's.
And I know that some people have. I know some people that have taken part in this experiment.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they're getting it. They're getting it. The one of the wee things is that so my pal's still making his he's still making the money that he was making.
Yeah.
And he's getting
Okay.
I think it's €1,000.
Yeah.
Or depends on what kind of thing you're involved in. Yeah, I'm interested to see what the conclusion will be, what the result will be. You know.
I suppose what I think would be cool, if not permanent universal basic income, would be able to say to people, give people like, okay, you're gonna have enough money for 6 months. If you want to start something in this 6 months, you've got the 6 months to do it.
Sure.
We'll cover you. Have a crack at it.
Yeah, man, that would be cool.
See how it works out.
Yeah.
Get your thing done, and then because a lot of that time that's beyond people.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, hey, getting free money off the state to go do anything for, within yourself, whether that be fitness or meditation or starting a business or doing something creative, I'm all for it, man. Absolutely all for it. I'm just kind of wondering, something that goes in the back of my head, just because of the way I've been acting for the past 6 weeks. And not now, I'm out of that phase now, because I'm like that. I need to, like I was telling you earlier, April and May are like...
Yeah.
The whole month of
I
March.
suppose you got to like, because that's the question, is like how long that lasts for. I think generally most people actually want to be active, contributing members of society.
I see, so.
And I think maybe some people will at the start take their foot off the gas, but deep down it's a fundamental human need and desire to feel useful and productive. And at the moment, people are only doing that either within the constraints of a capitalist system or as unpaid labor, as in like taking care of a family or so on. And I think that, I think people, I mean, at the moment there's so much unpaid labor that takes place within families already that it'd be cool if those people had some money, and then, like if you had enough money and you could keep on taking care of those things or contributing that in different ways, then I think that would be good. But I think fundamentally everybody deep down wants to be a contributing and valuable member of their community and their immediate surroundings. So I think maybe for 6 weeks people might be like, whoo, free money, nice. And after 6 weeks they're like, I hope so. I need to do something.
I would hope so. I hope so. Because I know. There's 3 or 4 people in my circle that literally don't do anything, and I'm like. I suppose part of me, like, to get into a deeper conversation about it, I think that a lot of people, those things are usually symptoms of something else, and most people have that. And it's like, and it's about not only providing people with support, like financially, but also being able to provide people with opportunities to contribute in whatever way they can. I think that would, I mean, I'm a complete utopian idealist, so I think it'd be super cool if, like, people were, like, okay, you get universal basic income, but if there's something that you're interested in, if there's an area you're interested in, there will be a support to help you pursue and work in that area, either it's in helping with research or anything like that. But massive utopian. I'm big into utopia and dystopia myself.
Yeah.
Have you ever read Utopia by Thomas More?
No, I thought you were going to say there's a Utopia for Realists.
No.
It's a really good one by Rutger Bregman. It's all about universal basic income and like a 20-hour work week, and about conceptualizing what we would like to, like, how do we want to live, right? Because for me, I work a lot, right? But the 40-hour work week, right? Or the 45-hour work week and the 5-day work week is a hangover from the Industrial Revolution. Because we used to work for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? We didn't design this because this is the best way to live as a human being. This is clawing back from a bad situation to get somewhere better. How do things look if we start by saying, what is the ideal ratio of work to life balance from the get-go?
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
What is it? Like, how many hours a week do people need to work to feel like they are doing enough work and to feel like they're productive? Not because if they don't do that, then they can't pay their rent. Like,
exactly.
So, and actually, like and we don't visualize, we don't think like this. We just think, we have to work like that. That's why we do it. Yeah. It's like, no, these systems are not from, like, these systems are created by us. In the first place, they didn't come from nowhere. So it's like, okay, what would we want to move towards?
And there's nothing worse than kind of, I'm sure everyone can relate, that you've been in work and whoever it is that's in charge, you know, a lot of businesses, they overproduce things. In fact, it's almost in their, you know, it's almost integral to the business plan to overproduce, because it's even wasteful stuff. There's a lot of there's weirdly, oxymoronically, there's a lot of benefit to be made. You know, sometimes it's better to produce and produce more food and let it go to waste than try and juggle how much do we actually need of the food. But what I wanted to say on that was that sometimes you're sitting there in your workplace and someone will just give you some job that's absolutely meaningless, because you're there and you have to, you know, you've got another 10 hours to do, and they'll just give you some meaningless job to do, and you're like, this, I could be home. Like, let's try and balance this out.
Yeah. I mean, you know about the theory of bullshit jobs?
I didn't know there was a theory about it, but...
Well, like, there's this bullshit jobs. There's a book, Bullshit Jobs, which is actually that so many people are in jobs that are bullshit. But if they feel like if they weren't doing that job and that job didn't exist, it makes no tangible difference. And there's a really high percentage of people who are in these jobs that they consider bullshit jobs that are probably useless and are probably superfluous and unnecessary.
Yeah.
And it's a huge percentage of people, bullshit jobs.
Interesting.
Yeah, so that's what people get locked into. I mean, that's because we have this conception of this is the way, and this is not. I mean, I love work. I work too much, probably.
Yeah,
I also just think that we, as human beings, like, we should not be working the way we do. We should be working like 4 days a week, 20 hours a week.
Max, absolutely maximum. Yeah, I've got Thomas More's Utopia book in there. I'm going to give it away with you.
Like that.
It was written in like 1516. It's old. It's like Thomas More was an English politician, bit of a dick, but everyone was back in 1516, to be honest. But yeah, it's his vision of utopia, going to an island and exploring that island and that being a utopian paradise, and he tries to cherry pick some of those things and tries to bring it back to the old world. Of England, and it just never ever comes to fruition, but it's his idea of what utopia should be. Very interesting.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll give you that way with you. Man, I mean, I could go on forever, mate, but I feel we're nearing the end of our time on the interview. Our allocated time, man. Well,
we didn't even talk about me DJing. I mean,
we didn't talk about you DJing.
I dropped it enough times, I did mention DJing enough times that people are probably aware that's a thing that I do.
Yes,
so,
you did.
And we don't want to start. If we don't want to tell a story about me DJing, because we'll be here all fucking night. It's another 15-minute story about how I won the lottery.
I mean, I would love how you won the lottery. Oh, for fuck's sake, Johnny! You've caught me in. You've ruined me in. Tell the story about how you won the lottery.
Well, I only got. This is a true story about how I started DJing. Do you want to hear, like, will this be the ender?
Let's do this. This will be the ender, man. Another wee 10 minutes, and then we're good.
Well, because I started DJing when I was 16. I had a really shit set of turntables, these belt drag turntables. And I didn't really have any money for records. I dropped out of school to join a training course called Quest. Like, I'd taken over the day I started. It ceased to exist by the end of my first week, and I had no job, no money, nothing. I joined this place to get £30 a week, so I could buy records and become a DJ.
Okay.
And then I had nothing. Like, I had zero, nada, no school. Like, I dropped out from A-levels. I was, like, shafted. Yeah, and then I was like, what am I going to do? My parents were getting divorced, and they were like, is there anything that you really want for Christmas? And I was like, I want a set of Technics. And they're like, okay, we'll get you a set of Technics.
Those beasts that last forever.
Still have them.
Nice.
So they were going to get me that for Christmas, but then I had no money for records and, nothing, right? And then I used to do the same numbers in the lottery every week. And this one week, I asked my friend Gary, I'm like, could you remind me when I'm walking my dog later to do the lottery, right? And by the time he reminded me, my mum had already done my numbers. So I was like, tell you what, I'll do different numbers. So I picked friends' birthdays and numbers that had some significance to me. And I did these numbers. I made sure they all added up to, I think it was like 123. Why? And then I just thought it would be a good number. So like I picked like 9, 13, 21, 28, 36, 44, 36, 42. So I picked these numbers and I did them. And then we're sitting in my house, me and my best mates, Steve and Alan and Ross, and we're sitting watching. My mum's away for the night to her sisters in Bangor, like 10 miles away. and I got my ticket, this one-off random ticket that I bought, and the first number dropped down was mine, and then the second number dropped down was mine, and the third,
I'm on the edge of my seat here, Johnny.
the fourth, and then the fifth, and I got the first 5 numbers that
Fucking
dropped down
hell.
on the lottery ticket. I didn't pay attention to the 6th number, which makes me think I probably should have, but because I would have got that anyway. So then I got these 5 numbers, and yeah, I got 5 numbers in the lottery. It wasn't a lot of money in it was a lot of money in relative terms. I left school for £30 a week, right?
Yeah,
and all of a sudden I had like £1,100, sorry, in the one go.
Right.
I had no school, no job, I had nothing, you know?
That it was €1,100.
It was like, I think it was like £1,138.
So it was always really surprising to me that like the lottery was always so low, because you ever think 5 numbers, fucking thousands, you know, I'm like that. I want like fucking 50 grand, and then you get there, it's like like 200 people also got 5 numbers or something.
Right.
It's okay.
But it's also, the funny thing is, like, in relative terms, you think like, oh, you're going to win the lottery, that's going to be a huge amount of money, right? It's what you need. But like when you're 17 years old and you're getting £30 a week and you get all that money in one go, it's like, I won the lottery, like literally. Yeah, it was crazy, because then I had phoned up my mum pre-mobile phone days, phoned up the hotel. I knew she was at having a drink with my auntie, and she's like, oh my god, what's happening? I was like, I've won the lottery, and I knew that she was putting away money for me to buy a mixer with. So I was like, can I get that money? And I bought all my friends a carryout, and I bought them all a Chinese takeaway and a load of booze, and we had an impromptu party. But what I did with that money, then I went out every week and went to the club, listened to the records, took notes, went out, went record shopping, and literally used that money every week, and for the next 3 or 4 months just bought records, went to the club, got seeped in it, and before I turned 18 I had my first guest DJ slot, and that's what I used. And then I got a residency by the time I was 18.
Love it.
And it was like I used that money from that random one-off, like that random lottery win, and that's what like basically made me into a DJ. Used all those records.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's a great story.
There you go. And then I haven't stopped. That was when I was 17.
So I think my favourite part of this story, and I love the fact that you won the lottery, and I love the fact that you're a DJ. I have a secret dream of mine, I think, is just to be sitting at a hotel bar, and then for like the barman to come over with like a phone, but like a corded one attached to him like that. Mr. Davis, someone on the phone for you. You just feel like the absolute shit. Yeah. I want those days to come back, man. If only just for that.
Yeah.
WhatsApp has stolen that feeling. Yeah. Well, man, mate, that was absolutely glorious. I'm pretty sure everyone watching, listening is going to agree. How can the people get in contact with you? How can they follow you on Instagram? Can they type in Lola to Google, I'm sure?
Yeah, it's at LOLA Mag Berlin on Instagram, lolamag.de on the interwebs, and then I'm just, if you search Jonny Tiernan.
Jonny Tiernan.
You'll find me. I'm on Instagram as well. I'm not hard to find.
I love it. Okay, so, man, cool. Yeah. Mate, that was an absolute pleasure.
Chris, thank you so much for having me on.
I've got a feeling there's going to be a couple of erections happened from the people watching, simply from our accents.
Okay,
and some women sliding off chairs. I mean, we're hitting both angles. I like it. I tried to even do more of a Glasgow accent just to keep up with your
shout out to my French intern Jasmine, who works with me every day and is half the day just like, what is this man saying? And I'm like, I'll slow down. Just has to learn.
Well, man, it was an absolute pleasure, man. Thank you, everyone watching it and listening. Feel free to check out the links below and your peripherals wherever you're watching it. Check out the cocktail that I made. Check out more stuff from Johnny. Check out more stuff from me. Until then, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excuse me, where can I get myself a drink?